is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 205 of Gaming with Grief, and I'm calling this episode God of War Ragnarok Deep Dive. But before we get going, I want to remind you guys that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamewithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m., so please go there and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the show. You can also subscribe to the podcast in either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, and Amazon Music on the podcast section. Go there, give me the likes, the stars, all that kind of stuff. And the video of this will go up day and date on YouTube at 7 a.m., just like it does. It hits the website. You can also subscribe there at that channel. It's the Gaming with Grief with Joseph Carlson. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, you can interact with me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So go to those places and Spotify. Monday evening, the video will go up there. I usually give it a little bit because I cannot plan when that stuff goes up. So it goes up Monday evening on Spotify. If that's where you want to go. And give me all the reviews, the likes, stuff like that. When you're interacting with those, whatever website or podcast service you want to, give me the ratings. So there's an addendum to this episode before I get into the God of War Ragnarok deep dive of the themes, things like that. So last week I said I wasn't able to watch the end of How to Say Goodbye. I actually remedied that. Gabe and the Goat, which I forgot to put in the description. I'll add the link to their channel, or at least the video, at least one of them. I'll do probably both. Anyway, they posted their final, the final chapter of the game, and put up the end. And basically, the game ends with you opening a door and seeing a loved one grieve for you in a hospital room. So I think I was kind of right in my spoiler cast when I talked about, I think what they're trying to say is this is a hospital, you're unplugging equipment, maybe the person's on life support. And then you go to a couple more screens that are very simple, and you basically see someone at your grave. And so, you were a loved one to somebody, and I think that's important. Whenever you talk about grief, to think about, other people. And, I think the game was very affecting. I don't know if this really changed my overall thoughts on the game or spoiler-filled thoughts, kind of spoiler-filled thoughts, because, again, I had a game-breaking bug. But, it was still a good game. I think the puzzles are pretty clever, but I usually don't review game design. So since it was abstract, I think in the bad way, I talked about Last Day of June a lot. I'm trying to think of another one. I played mostly like narrative-driven stuff, but it was very, it was good, but not the best, I think, representation of. But again, I guess my comments do stand in the beginning of that, where I talked about, if I had a young child or somebody basically just a young child, maybe I would give this to them early on so they could, experience, or at least kind of hopefully in a simpler way process what is going on. So I guess that's really my only takeaway from that. But let's get on to God of War Ragnarok. So usually in these deep dive sections, I go over themes and things like that and where it's going. But what's really weird is I hadn't played this game in a while, so I sat down and played it for about an hour, and I was right at this big story beat. So I'm gonna kind of ruin one story beat of the game. So if you don't want to be ruined on God of War Ragnarok, skip ahead a few minutes. But I'm just gonna go over stuff very quickly. And I'll try to be as non-spoilery as possible. But I'm just giving you a spoiler warning if you want to know nothing about God of War Ragnarok, or even what is happening. Anyway, there's a moment in the game that I'm playing. I'm about halfway through, I think, where Freya. Something terrible happened in the first game. I did my spoiler cast on that. Kratos killed her son. She wanted to try to save her son, and her son was going to kill her. There's this really great moment where you meet back up with Freya in God of War Ragnarok, and she still wants to kill you for killing her son. Totally makes sense. But you go through this situation together. Again, I'm trying to keep it as vague as possible. And when everything is done and you guys work together, Kratos asks, do you still want to kill me, basically? And she says, I don't know. But I think we kind of have to keep moving in a way. And it's very tense. It's a very good scene. And that brought me up to the idea of reconciliation. Now, the little bit of reconciliation I know is when I was in college, I had to read about South Africa and apartheid and their Truth and Reconciliation Council. And that was so enlightening. I'm not going to go over the whole history of apartheid. Just know that it was one state, two systems for one state, which is what I've heard basically apartheid, characterized as before. I know if I was really cool and slick, I would read from like Webster's Dictionary, but people think that's dry. What I understand is there was major war crimes and atrocities going on in the country. And in the early 90s, I believe 94, the Truth and Reconciliation Council was formed with Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, and they basically let, it seems like, both sides of the conflict that was going on, this travesty, they were allowing both sides to sit up and literally take the stand in like a court setting and speak. And their idea was, and this is just from my reading and stuff like that in my notes, the idea was that we don't want to be like the Nuremberg trials. We want to, instead of being punitive, we want there to be a reconciliation, meaning the way I've been pitched reconciliation, and this is the one that I've seen over and over again, is two people have something really terrible happen to them. You can't forgive the other person for what they've done, no matter what it is. But you've decided to move on with your relationship, for good or bad. Basically good. I guess it's to salvage the relationship. I would imagine, I've never really had this. I mean, although the death of my parents was terrible, I think what it was it was more of reconciliation is like, it seems like assault or sexual assault, or it could be a variety of things. But for whatever reason, you decide that the relationship with the person should be salvaged, but you also agree that the things that happened in the past cannot be healed. And there's a big thread, and this also brings on apologies. Do you have the right to accept an apology from someone? Or, if someone apologizes to you, do you have to accept it? Can you say, I don't accept your apology? That's very awkward. And that's, in a way, this leads to reconciliation. If you apologize to someone because you genuinely feel like you've aggrieved them and they return, I don't accept your apology, that is also, I think, acceptable. Because, I'm not going to make a moral judgment on anybody, but there is red lines in relationships that people pass all the time, and they maybe don't know they did it. And it is within your right as a human being to say, what you've done is too far. It's too much. I can't reconcile these things. And really, for me, that's reading about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I did a little research today to kind of, I don't know about brush up is the right term, but just refamiliarize myself with everything. That's what came to. And that's what happens in God of War Ragnarok. Two characters that cannot see eye to eye, reconcile, and decide to move forward. In fact, Kratos apologizes in a way. Again, this is light spoilers for God of War Ragnarok, so skip ahead if you want to hear this. But he says, I understand that you wanted to save your son. And in God of War 2018, Baldur was trying to kill Freya, and Kratos intervened, broke his neck, and killed him. So Kratos in this moment says, I understand you were trying to save your son, and it was not my place to intervene. I apologize for that. And it's shout out to 2022 graphics, because this looks amazing. The performance is captured. This is movie quality of two actors killing it. And in the description, I actually didn't write down the actors for Freya. I'm a terrible person. But she did an amazing job. Christopher Judge, I know, as Kratos did an amazing job. And I think it was just two powerful performances in a situation, letting us know that they have to move on with their relationship. And that's kind of like where the crux of everything came from today when I was playing the game, or yesterday. And I was like, wow, what a powerful moment of two people that realize, and what that means for life too, of setting down your problems or issues. Obviously, these characters have two big issues with each other in the game, and just saying we have to move forward. And I think that reconciliation is like a powerful, powerful idea. I still don't know if it's positive or negative, but like with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, I remember reading reports, and people were saying the biggest atrocities that were taking place, and that, they had been aggrieved or wounded, or literally, their relatives had been murdered by, someone else. And they were just talking about the pain they had experienced. And I think this may sound really strange, but lately I've been hearing a lot about, not to get too political, hear a lot about victim culture. Don't say you're a victim, push through, grind it out, move on, push ahead. Those are all very valid points. But I think the part that many of those people in those conversations are missing is the part about realizing how you've been victimized and what to do with that and be able to move on with those pieces, whether that be therapy or any kind of like group counseling, or maybe talking with a religious figure, a priest or a pastor that you care about deeply, talking with a friend or family member, again, reaching out maybe to get an apology for somebody or making an apology and realizing that maybe that isn't possible, but at least attempting. Because I think, although I said, the person doesn't have the right to make the apology, I also said, you realizing you've done something wrong and say, I need to apologize to this person to make it right. I think that's pretty powerful. And I don't think people should be guilted or whatever for doing that. And I commend anybody who does that walking forward. My father was in recovery. I talked about that. He was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of the time he talked about making amends to people. I believe it's the 4th step as well in Alcoholics Anonymous, and how difficult that is, and how, it even says in that step, whether to make amends, it says, except when to do so would injure them or other people. So by you amending something, you could hurt other people by saying, this is what I did, because maybe it's something that happened with a group of people or to a group of people that maybe some people aren't aware of. I guess that doesn't make sense. What I'm trying to say is, you may think that it may involve more people than just person A, person B. So again, GoW Ragnarok right now is doing this amazing job of reconciliation between two characters that are opposed, one for a thing of literally killing the child of the other one. And I do like leading up to this, they try to have a conversation. Obviously, if you played any of the older God of War games, you realize that Kratos has had a history. He was had a blood rage, enraged by the gods, went to a village to kill a bunch of people, and then he ended up killing his family, his wife and child. He tries to tell Freya this in God of War Ragnarok. She, of course, doesn't want to listen to him, because I think there is something precious about holding on to your pain and like harnessing it. In fact, Kratos says something like this: "You use your anger well," and she says, maybe I'm just doing what I'm trying to do, or something like that. Anyway, I think this game, I'm going to have an amazing time with the spoiler cast, because I really want to get into these issues. It might be a fairly long episode because, again, I hadn't played it a while. I wanted to play it. And then when I sat down to play it, I was kind of blown away by like just coming back and being awash by all these issues and themes that they were bringing up, that I was like, this is amazing. So kudos to the team so far. I'm only halfway through. I've heard very good things about it. This game won awards, so I'm hoping that continues for the rest of the game. And, that's it. I think it's a pretty good episode. I think I did everything. If you want to know more about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, I will leave that in the comment section if you just want to read up on it or know how reconciliation worked or how they put it together. I'll leave the Winky link there. Again, I read that a little bit just to brush up. But before we go, I want to remind you guys that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamewithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. So please go there and let me know what you think of the show. You can also subscribe to the podcast in either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, or Amazon Music in the podcast section. You can also find us on Spotify. And the video of the episode will go up on Spotify Monday night. And it will go up on the video, will go up on YouTube Monday morning at 7 a.m., just like it'll hit the podcast. If you want to write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. If there's a game you want me to maybe look at or review or something like that, please go there and interact with me there. You can also talk to me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So I know Twitter's really weird right now and strange, but you can still go there and interact with me there, and I'll try to answer your questions if I can. And, don't be afraid to write. I've heard even from bigger YouTubers and bigger podcasters that how much of your audience reaches out and gets a hold of you. I have a few times with a podcast that I really enjoy, but don't be afraid if you think something's strange or stupid. I'm not going to say that there's stupid questions, but you don't know what you don't know. And again, I'm not trying to gatekeep anything. I'm just trying to be informative and share my story. So anyway, you guys have a good week, and I will talk to you everybody again next week. Bye.